Hi, today is 11/25/20, and I'm doing a lesson on the spirit of fear. And the Holy Spirit asked me to do this for the martyrs of faith because your time is at the door and He's getting ready to prepare you for your calling. And I just want to say that He stated that it does not matter if you're in good standing before Him, that these martyrs, this is your calling, and He said it is going to be many, and that it does not matter if you're prepared and ready and walking upright before Him. You will not be zoomed out of here in a rapture. You are going to be a martyr, and nothing is going to change your fate, that this is what you were called to be. And it says in His word, precious in the sight of God is the death of His saints. Peter, Paul, all the James, Stephen, they were martyrs of faith, and many around the world today, even now, are martyrs of faith. And it says precious, meaning there's nothing wrong with that. And so He says that it is going to be many, and that many think that they're going to be raptured out of here, but He says no, you're going to be martyred, and that this is your calling and you can't get out of it, that this is what He called you to be. And so He needs to bring you out of your deception, and you need to face the truth and come to reality that this is your calling. Now, here in the book of Job, the 11th chapter and verse 13 says, if thou prepare thine heart and stretch out thine hands toward Him, meaning God, if iniquity be in thine hand, put it far away, and let not wickedness dwell in thy tabernacles. For then shalt thou lift up thy face without spot, yea, thou shalt be steadfast, and shalt not fear. When you're operating in sin, it makes you fear. If you're not and you put it away, then you have confidence in God, and that confidence helps to bring about faith and trust in the living God, and knowing that He will have your back in that hour and defend you, because innocency is found in your hand. Because thou shalt forget thy misery and remember it as waters that pass away. And thine age shall be clearer than the noonday. Thou shalt shine forth, thou shalt be as the morning. And thou shalt be secure, because there is hope. Yea, thou shalt dig about thee, and thou shalt take thy rest in safety. Also thou shalt lie down, and none shall make thee afraid. Yea, many shall make suit unto thee. But the eyes of the wicked shall fail, and they shall not escape, and their hope shall be as the giving up of the ghost. If you are in sin, you're going to doubt at that moment, and you're going to turn and shrink back and go the other way. He said that the beast is going to do a replica of what Nebuchadnezzar did, and he's going to be casting people. Some of his children would die through the fiery furnace. He's going to mock this and imitate this, and many are going to shrink back in fear. And so He said this, if they would stand up and not bow down, I will remove them before they hit the flame. He meant He will remove your spirit out of your body before your flesh hits the flame. That takes faith and confidence and trust in your God. And it takes removing yourself from sin to be able to do that, to have that confidence in that hour. He says, many will not stand on my word, and they will refuse me and deny my name and go to hell. Now, for instance, we're going to see what happened when the spirit of fear took over Peter. Luke 22 verse 31 says, and the Lord said, Simon, Simon, meaning He's speaking to Peter, Simon Peter, Behold, Satan hath desired to have you, that he may sift you as wheat. But I have prayed for thee that thy faith fail not, and when thou art converted, strengthen thy brethren. Now he let Peter know that faith is the thing that will fail you, and it will cause you to deny me. In that little sentence. So that tells you that if you fear, you're lacking in faith, and you need to get your faith up in order to overcome the spirit of fear. And so now, and Peter was so sure that he would not do this. Listen to him. And he said unto him, Lord, I am ready to go with thee both into prison and to death. And he said, I tell thee, Peter, the cock shall not crow this day before that thou shalt thrice, meaning 3 times, deny that thou knowest me. Because God knows all things before they will happen. And we are to rely on him and him alone when it comes to having your faith. And so you need to start preparing yourself now and letting him perfect your faith, because you will not be able to stand in that hour and think that you can have perfect faith in that moment, and you have not prepared yourself, because it is a mental thing and a heart thing, and you can't get that instantly. You can't play in sin all this time and think at the last minute you'll do it. No, you won't. No, you won't. Now, let's see what happened. Let's see if what Jesus spoke to Peter will come to pass. Although he did give him the answer how to overcome, but Peter didn't catch it. Now, okay, verse 56 says, But a certain maid beheld him as he sat, she's speaking of Peter, sat by the fire, and earnestly looked upon him and said, This man was also with him. And he, Peter, denied him, saying, Woman, I know him not. And after a little while another saw him and said, Thou art also of them. And Peter said, Man, I am not. And about the space of 1 hour after another confidently affirmed, saying, Of a truth, this fellow also was with him, for he is a Galilean. And Peter said, Man, I know not what thou sayest. And immediately, while he yet spake, the cock crew. See that? Jesus knows what he's saying. If you don't let him begin to prepare you now, you will not be ready. As he said, many will not stand on my word, and they will refuse me and deny me and my name and go to hell. He knows what will happen before it will happen. And notice Peter did this out of what? Fear, meaning what? His faith was not whole. He did not have as much faith as he thought he did. And so we're going to give another example in his word concerning the spirit of fear. But this also lets you know Jesus gave him the answer when he said, But I have prayed for thee that thy faith fail not. That means his faith, Peter's faith, failed him. That's how he denied Jesus, through the spirit of fear. So in that hour, you cannot fail in your faith, because it will cause you to deny Jesus. In order to keep from denying him, you have to have strong faith. That is why he's preparing you and putting you through these hard trials that you hate so bad. It is because in order to keep your faith from failing at that time so that you can fulfill your calling, you can't waver. And he has to keep testing you until he perfects it, where you just simply will not waver. Because if you can waver, your faith can fail you like Peter, even though you don't think it can. God knows you can. He knows when you're ready, and you don't. He knows how to prepare you, and you don't. Now, in the book of Job, here we see in Job, the first chapter, where Job basically, in all the afflictions, when his faith was being tested, all of the afflictions that came upon him, listen at what Job said. Then Job arose and rent his mantle and shaved his head. This is verse 20. And fell down upon the ground and worshipped, and said, Naked came I out of my mother's womb, and naked shall I return thither. The Lord gave, and the Lord had taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. In all this Job sinned not, nor charged God foolishly. When his trial began, all 10 of his children killed in one day, his cattle, house set on fire, one thing after another. He did not curse God. His wife told him to do it. He rebuked her. He did not do it. He was being tempted of the devil. His faith was being tried, but he still did not get angry and rebel and curse God. He didn't charge God foolishly. And so when you're going through these trials and you're enduring these hard tests and hearing these hard words, and it hurts and it burns like fire in your chest, and it feels like God's hand is against you, listen to me. It is not. The enemy will lie to you in your mind and tell you God is against you. He's fighting you. You did something, you sinned. He's angry at you. That's why. If you're sinning, you know why some of these things are happening. But if you're walking pretty much upright before God and you're not sinning, know this: just because you're going through the trial does not mean you did anything wrong. It's just like Job, a testing of your faith, and he's preparing you for something coming. He's preparing you. Not all, for some, he's just testing their faith because it's time to go home. But it's time for all of his sheep to go home. The thing is, how are you going to go out? How are you going to get there? And so you guys, it's time for you to go before God and find out, what is your calling? Are you a martyr? Go before him, and if he confirms this, do not run from it. Accept your fate. I will tell you, running from your fate is not going to change it. But if you try to run, you're going to end up back where you started. You will have to keep retaking the test over and over again until you pass it. And whatever fate he has given you in order to enter his kingdom, that is the only way you can enter. So if he has told you you're a martyr, you are a martyr. Accept it. Don't deceive yourself into thinking you're going to flap out of here. Just accept it. When you accept it, all the confusion that's surrounding you, it will go away. The confusion is coming because something's out of order. Something's wrong. Something's wrong. Sin is in the midst, whether it be doubt, or whether it be something you're doing, or whether it be deception. If confusion is there, it's something wrong. Then that means that you need to go before God and ask him, where's the confusion coming from? What am I doing wrong? What is out of order? If you are in deception concerning who you are and your calling, this can cause confusion. Go to God and ask him to clear up the confusion, and he will do it gladly. In doing so, be willing to accept whatever fate he himself has given you. Even if it hurts, even if it burns, the truth is the only thing that can set you free, nothing else. Now we're going into the book of Daniel, and we're going to see the results of Daniel when he was in the face of the spirit of fear. Let's see how he reacted. Daniel, however, was told within 30 days, Nebuchadnezzar gave a decree nobody was to worship their God but only him. And there were others that was trying to set Daniel up. They heard him praying and worshiping to the true and living God, and they went and snitched on him. And in doing so, Nebuchadnezzar found out. But because he had gave his word and made a decree, he had to, as a king, fulfill it. And this is what he said to Daniel. It says, then, this is 6 and 16. Verse 16. Then the king commanded, and they brought Daniel and cast him into the den of lions. Now the king spake and said unto Daniel, thy God whom thou servest continually, he will deliver thee. You see, Nebuchadnezzar knew that Daniel's God was the true and living God because of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And we will go back to them in a moment. That is how he knew that this God could deliver Daniel. So he pretty much knew this God was going to deliver him because he was innocent. And a stone was brought and laid upon the mouth of the den, and the king sealed it with his own signet and with the signet of his lords, that the purpose might not be changed concerning Daniel. Then the king went to his palace and passed the night fasting, neither were instruments of music brought before him, and his sleep went from him. He was troubled in his mind. Then the king arose very early in the morning, and went in haste unto the den of lions. And when he came to the den, he cried with a lamentable voice unto Daniel. And the king spake and said to Daniel, O Daniel, servant of the living God, is thy God, whom thou servest continually, able to deliver thee from the lions? Then said Daniel unto the king, O king, live forever. My God has sent his angel, and hath shut the lions' mouths, that they have not hurt me, for as much as before him innocency, you see, that was found in me. And also before thee, O king, I have done no hurt, because Daniel was found in innocency here again, and he had faith, and he trusted in his God, not man. God delivered him. When you stand strong and you trust in your God and you represent him and you refuse to bow down to the enemy, he will never forsake you or let you down. He will represent you and vindicate you every time. You will come up as a winner and victorious. And now we're going to Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Here it is in chapter 3. Nebuchadnezzar made a golden image, and he made a decree that when everyone in his kingdom heard the instruments playing, the flute, sackbut, psaltery, and all that, etc., were played, everyone was to stop what they were doing, bow down, and worship this golden image. Well, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego worshiped the true and living God, and they were like, no, I'm not doing that. And they stood on the truth. They trusted in their God. Innocency was found in them. They had faith in their God. Their relationship, their faith in their God, their relationship it brought them, they had confidence. Confidence brings about faith. They trust in him because they worshiped him. And surely he had already proven his hand. Look at all the miracles he worked in Israel in that day. And so because of these miracles and things, he had proven himself to be trusted and found worthy. And so because of this, they knew their God, if they had faith in him, that he would deliver them. And if they walked upright before him, he would once again deliver them. When you are not in sin and you're walking upright before God, you cannot tell me he will not stand with you. Yes, he will. He will vindicate you every time. But now, if you're going around and you're dabbling in sin and you think in that moment, you do have something to fear, because doubt will creep into your heart and mind, and you will think, I don't think, you notice you won't have confidence, because you will say, I'm not sure he's going to stand with me and defend me and represent me because I'm in sin. This is why God asks his children not to be in sin, because when you're tempted of the devil, you will stumble. If you're operating in sin, you will stumble. And in a moment like this, to be a martyr where you will be faced, a matter of life and death, you can't afford to be wavering in your faith. Doubt is sin itself. You cannot afford, you have got to be confident in your God and know that you know that you know that your God will defend you. And if you're walking upright, as it says in the book of Job, then you have nothing to fear. And here they refused, and they told Nebuchadnezzar, it says, verse 16, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego answered and said to the king, O Nebuchadnezzar, we are not careful to answer thee in this matter. If it be so, our God whom we serve is able to deliver us from the burning fiery furnace, and he will deliver us out of thine hand, O king. They stood on the word of their gods, and they trusted in their God, not man. And for those of you that will put your trust in man, man is going to fail you. And man, which is the beast, is going to lead you straight into hell. And here they even go even further and say, but if not, be it known unto thee, O king, that we will not serve thy gods, nor worship the golden image which thou hast set up. They even went as far as to tell him, even if God does not deliver us, in so many words, if you throw us in there and we get burned up alive, we'll just take that. At least we will die knowing we will end up in heaven because we represented our God. If you stand up and do the right thing, you have nothing to fear. You will die knowing you will go to the right place because you are representing your God. And verse 28, it says, when the whole thing was over, they were cast in there. I'm going to read this. It says, and verse 20, and he commanded the most mighty men that were in his army to bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, and to cast them into the burning fiery furnace. Then these men were bound in their coats, their hosen, their hats, and their other garments, and were cast into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. Therefore, because the king's commandment was urgent and the furnace exceeding hot, the flame of the fire slew the men that took up Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. And these three men, Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, fell down bound into the midst of the burning fiery furnace. And then we're going to, verse 25 says, he answered and said, Lo, I see 4 men loose, walking in the midst of the fire, and they have no hurt. And the form of the fourth is like the Son of God. Skip down to verse 28. It says, Then Nebuchadnezzar spake and said, Blessed be the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, who hath sent his angel and delivered his servants that trusted in him, and have changed the king's word and yielded their bodies that they might not serve nor worship any god except their own God. Notice it said his servants that trusted in him. And in order to have faith in God, you have got to trust in him. And he will test you and test you and test you until he perfects your faith. And this is also for his 144,000. He also asked me to put this in here for the 144,000. He said to let you know that he is trying and testing them. And indeed, this is true because I am going through this. And He says that these tests are to perfect your faith, because in the days ahead, in order to work these miracles, you have to have strong faith. And so you must pass these tests. And even when it looks like you're not hearing him, even when it sounds like you're not hearing him and things sound crazy, you must believe, you must ignore, you must push through and believe, no matter what you hear or see, that you are hearing from God and that you can hear his voice. Do not listen to the enemy, and push through. And when you do that and you stand firm to the end and don't waver, just keep pushing through. If you stumble, get back up and push through until you complete the course, because your faith has to be perfected in order for him to use you in that hour. And trust me, all will be perfected in time for him to use you. And now he gave me a word, because he said that in these last days that for those that the beast is going to try to cast into he's going to cast them into the furnace. They're going to replicate what Nebuchadnezzar did. And this word, he says, for these individuals, when those that are chosen to go that way, he says, if they would stand up and not bow down, I will remove them before they hit the flame. And he says, many will not stand on my word, and they will refuse me and deny my name and go to hell. And what he meant by that is, if you trust in him, he will deliver you. He meant he will remove your spirit out of your body, and before your flesh, your body hits the flame, you won't feel the flame, because your soul he will basically take it out the body, remove it, and you won't feel it. So for those of you that will deny him, you have sin in your heart and mind, and you're dabbling in sin. And so when you go that hour before him, before the beast, before the enemy, or before whomever standing before you to cast you in there, you will not be able to fulfill this calling, because you are in sin. And you will not be confident when you stand before your God. Even when you're facing the spirit of fear, you must have confidence, and it takes faith to have that, and trust in your God. And there's one last one, and I'm done, and we're going to do Abraham. Now, Abraham, in order for Abraham to, it took a lot of faith for Abraham to do this. Abraham trusted God. He did not shrink back in fear. And because he did not shrink back in fear, he got a blessing. God was testing him. Do you not think Abraham probably was, there's no probably, do you not think he was scared when God asked him to do this, to sacrifice Isaac upon the altar, his only child, by Sarai? Yes, but many today would say, that is not God, that's a demon, because God would not ask me to do that. That is what many of you are doing now. You're shrinking back in fear. God is speaking to you, and you're calling it a demon. And you're blaspheming. It's costing you your soul. Fear causes torment. It will cause you to do what? Deny God, just like it caused Peter to deny God. And this hour, the reason many are committing the ultimate blasphemy is out of fear. You are hearing something Him coming, he's speaking to you in a different way or in a form you don't understand, because the word is not in you that good. You're not rooted and grounded, and you don't study the word, so therefore you don't know the word when you hear it, and you don't know God's voice when you hear it, and you're stumbling. And so when you hear him speak to you in an unfamiliar way, what you deem unfamiliar, which if you knew the scripture, you would recognize his voice in spite of how he spoke. God speak. Did he not open the mouth of a donkey and made it speak? It speak. It rebuked the prophet. God does many strange things. So you can't put him in a box and tell him. It says, out of the mouth of babes now, praise is perfected. God, I have heard him speak out of a 5-year-old more than one time to me years ago, more than one time, speaking knowledge and wisdom for someone probably about 30 or 40 years old out of a 5-year-old. He gave me answers. So you see, you can't tell God how to speak. He chooses to speak. He asks us to do strange things, but it doesn't mean it's not God. When your faith has been tried and tested, God will sometimes give you a confirmation before he asks you to do something. He don't always do that. Sometimes God will ask you to do something, and you will not get the confirmation until you obey him first and do that thing. And when you step out on blind faith and do that thing, then he will give you the confirmation. This has happened to me many times. Abraham was told to sacrifice Isaac. He did not get the confirmation until after he stepped out on blind faith to go and do it. Then God provided the sacrifice just like he said he would, a lamb, not his son. You don't always get a confirmation before. Sometimes you won't get it until after you walk by faith and not by sight. This is what the martyrs will have to do in these last days. You will have to walk by faith and not by sight. You will have to trust in your God and know that he will defend you in that hour, that he says he will neither leave you nor forsake you. Trust in your God that in that very moment, he will not abandon you, that if innocency is found in your hands, you bet your God will defend you and vindicate you. I will say this, that Abraham's situation has happened to many of you in a strange way. Like it did with Abraham. All he had was the voice of God to go off of. It was just the voice of God. Okay, there was no Bible, I'm pretty sure back then. They were just going off of probably a few scrolls, and that was it. And Abraham just had the voice of God, and he obeyed it blindly. What Abraham did, you guys know today you would have said it was a demon and you would not have obeyed. This generation is doing that. Stop doing it. If God tells you to do something, do it. Walk by faith and not by sight. And when you blindly obey, you will get the blessing. Abraham did. But if you hesitate, you won't get the blessing. You will curse yourself. And then if you look back, like Lot's wife, she was told not to look back. She looked back. It cost her soul. Fear caused her to look back. Many of you are looking back, and if you don't stop, it's going to cost you your soul. When you doubt, you're looking back. Overcome. Press through. Trust in your God that if something is of him, he will prove it one way or another. If you step out on faith, he will still reward you and you still will not take a loss. But if you hesitate and you don't trust in him, and then you decide to do it and the window of opportunity has passed and you do it too late, you can do it all you want. You're still going to take a loss because you look back like Lot's wife. And once you do that, you still will not get a blessing. So be encouraged and take heed in this hour that this information is vital for the martyrs, but it is also vital for his children in hearing God's voice in this hour and making decisions in this hour. And when he's speaking, he's giving commands to his children, asking them to do things. And you guys are scared and you're thinking it's the enemy. God says, my sheep hear my voice, and none other will they follow. If you do not know the voice of your God in this hour, how could you fulfill your calling as a martyr? You're in trouble. That means you don't know God's word. You guys need to sit down and read his word. The only thing that can set you free in this hour is the truth. The truth is the living word. Read it. That is how you're going to know his voice when you hear it. And so when he's speaking, you're going to know who is authentic and who is fake. You will not know it unless you read his word. You're trying to skip reading his word and use your own, leaning to your own understanding with limited knowledge and trying to discern what is of him and what is not. You cannot do that. Because everything in the middle that you're trying not to eat, that's the best part of the pie. That's where all the information is. And you guys are trying to eat the front, the edging. You're really trying to eat around the edge, but you don't want to eat what's in the middle. No, you have to read God's word fully in order to know how he comes. That way, when you hear him speak, you won't call it a demon. That way, you will step out on blind faith and obey and get the blessing like Abraham. Thanks for watching.